After watching Spider-Man No Way Home, you're probably thinking there's no way a Spider-Man movie can ever top this, but I cooked up a Spider-Man 4 theory that will blow your mind, including Gwen, Black Cat, Kingpin, and much more. So let's go. I think Spider-Man 4 will start with a montage of Peter juggling, going to college classes at some school in New York City, and we cut from that to him stopping a series of little gang-related crimes as he becomes aware of because of the police scanner he has at the end of Spider-Man No Way Home. And this would kind of be a mirror to the beginning of the first trilogy in Homecoming when he's just balancing high school and stopping petty crimes. Although as he's stopping these crimes, he realizes there's something bigger going on and he's trying to get to the bottom of it. And during one of these robberies he goes to stop, thanks to his spidey sense, he realizes that it is a staged robbery to distract him from a real crime a few blocks down. So he leaves the scene to go stop the real crime and intercepts Felicia Hardy, better known as Black Cat, escaping with an expensive painting. She flirts with him a bit as she does and uses that to distract Peter and escape with her art for the time being.
Felicia has a son? Can't be. I mean, it could be, and I could be. No. I'm not gonna think about that right now.
Impressive. Your parents must be very proud.
But little does Peter know, Black Cat was actually planning on getting partially caught by him, as she was hired by Kingpin to get closer to him, in addition to stealing art for him. And if you're wondering how did Felicia and Kingpin ever get associated together, they started working together when Felicia went to him to help liquidate the paintings that she was stealing into cash because she couldn't do it on her own and she knew where to go to get those mob ties. And he uses her to get closer to Spider-Man to slowly take him down as he realizes that he's the one stopping all the crimes that his mob is running. Then, back as Peter Parker at college, he meets Gwen Stacy and they become sort of academic rivals as they're both on top of their class students. Peter wants to get closer to Gwen, but he struggles due to him spending so much time on this rising organized crime happening in New York City. And you're probably thinking Gwen Stacy and Black Cat introduced in the same movie, but hear me out, with MJ out of the picture, at least for now, it's a perfect time to introduce these other love interests for Peter because he's completely alone at the end of No Way Home. He's going to be more vulnerable to these new relationships, and I believe this creates sort of a love triangle. Peter knows Gwen is obviously the better option than Felicia, but he has flashbacks to losing MJ, Ned, and Aunt May due to him being Spider-Man and the danger it put them in. And while trying to stop Black Cat again, he realizes that he is catching feelings for Black Cat as well, and he also notices that she is able to defend herself and hold her own against him, meaning she would be safer with him than a regular person would. Black Cat also starts falling for Spider-Man as well, even though she has no idea who Peter Parker is. She is in love with the idea of Spider-Man. But Kingpin is the main villain here, and he is planning to take over the city, and he plans to do this by holding the city hostage with a bomb, similar to the Dark Knight Rises, but this does happen in the comics in a very similar way too. But Felicia learns of Fisk's evil plan when sneaking around and overhearing Fisk talking to one of his men, and as she is about to leave with his info, she is caught by one of Kingpin's men, and ultimately she's threatened to be killed. Having nothing else to offer, she accepts Kingpin's plea deal of letting her live in exchange for killing Spider-Man in the next 24 hours, as Kingpin is planning to start his plan in the next day and needs Spider-Man gone and out of the picture, because he can tell that Spider-Man is moving in on his operation and getting closer to it. But Kingpin is also a smart man and doesn't put all his eggs in one basket. So he breaks another crime boss in the comics out of prison, who we've seen before, Mac Gargan. You might know him better as Scorpion all the way back from the Spider-Man Homecoming post-credit scene. And in exchange for being broken out of prison, Gargan accepts to undergo an experiment held by Kingpin that ultimately turns into the Scorpion we all know. And Kingpin wants him to be his bodyguard because he knows that Mac also hates Spider-Man, and he knows he's desperate to get out of prison, so Kingpin figures he'll accept anything to get out. And plus, now Kingpin has a super-powered bodyguard. Now, quickly, I'd like you reminded to gently tap that like button, and let's continue with the theory. Meanwhile, Peter is destroying his personal life by neglecting his college work and blowing off Gwen in order to stop Kingpin's plan, and it takes a toll on him as he knows they can't explain to Gwen that he's Spider-Man and that's why he's blowing her off. This leads him to believe further that Felicia may be the only hope of a relationship he has anymore, since he met her as Spider-Man, not as Peter. The next morning, Black Cat ultimately chooses to betray Kingpin and tell Spider-Man that Fisk is initiating his plan today, and the two team up. But little did Felicia know, she was followed by Mac Gargan, aka Scorpion now, to make sure she went through with Kingpin's plan of killing Spider-Man. And in case you're thinking the Scorpion storyline doesn't make any sense, something very similar happens in the comics. He's initially a private detective in one of the storylines, hired by J. Jonah Jameson to find out how Peter gets such good pictures of Spider-Man, and he's ultimately experimented on by J. Jonah Jameson to turn him into Scorpion. I don't think that storyline makes sense with the Jameson that we have in the MCU, and now with Kingpin being introduced, I think this makes a lot of sense with Kingpin. So Black Cat and Spider-Man fight Scorpion and ultimately defeat him, but as they do that, they see a broadcast on Times Square of Kingpin announcing that the entire city is ready to explode, and unless the entire New York City police force surrenders and starts working under his control, everyone will pay the price, starting with the mayor who he has hostage and will force to detonate the bomb in exactly 1 hour. Spider-Man goes hunting for where Kingpin is, trying to find his hideout where he's broadcasting from using a spidey sense, but as he's searching all over the city, he sees that Gwen and her family are being taken hostage by Kingpin's men because her father is the police captain and refuses to stand down to these gangsters. Though Peter knows that the entire city is at stake with Kingpin, so he sends Black Cat to save Gwen while he finds Kingpin. So Felicia ends up saving Gwen and everyone in her family besides the father who gets shot, as like I said he's the police commissioner, and Peter locates Kingpin while this is happening and has a fight with him and all his henchmen. And this is seen by all of New York on the stream that Kingpin showed that he has a hostage of the mayor on, and since this is being streamed to all of New York, this finally makes New York and the police like Spider-Man. After Peter stops Kingpin and obviously the bomb with him, he finds Black Cat who tells him Gwen's father dies, and Peter knows he has to stay away from Gwen as it will only bring her more danger than she was already in if they are together, and he decides to end up with Felicia as he believes that she's fully turned to the good side. But in the post-credit scene, we see Felicia meeting up with Valentina, who you might remember from The Falcon and Winter Soldier and Black Widow post-credits, and we see Felicia telling her that she has fully gained Spider-Man's trust now in an ominous cutaway. And you're probably thinking, so no Venom? What was the point of the No Way Home post-credit scene? Don't worry, I'll have another theory video revolving all around my ideas of how Venom can be the main villain instead, but I personally think they're going to keep building up to this for a bit longer as it's going to be a massive event, and as we saw with the Scorpion post-credit scene in Homecoming, they're not in a rush of forcing the villains from the post-credit scene into the very next movie. And plus, I think in Venom 3 they might find a way to make it make sense that Tom Hardy is actually the Venom in the MCU instead of recasting him, because he is very loved and makes way too much money as Venom. So let me know your theories in the comments below, or your thoughts on mine, if it's garbage, if you think it's pretty good. Now I know I didn't have like insane amount of plot details here, just a general synopsis, because obviously it'd be way too much to follow if I did every single little detail. But I personally think this is very likely to happen as Kingpin is now introduced into the MCU and he has a few years to build up his rep in some smaller shows and roles before we get the next Spider-Man movie. So check out the videos that are on screen right now for more Spider-Man and MCU content, and I will see you guys in the next one.